We're start out with the pledge of allegiance.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Burley Logan,
Present.
Mayor, here, Wolfersberger,
Here.
Cummings,
Here.
Brett.
Here.
So, Mark,
Yes.
you open with the public hearing, correct?
Yeah, you, just kind of call roll, and then your public hearings at the very beginning of the meeting, and then after that, you'll have all the regular stuff that you normally have. I probably, to the extent you're gonna have public comment on the TIF, which is part of the public hearing, I would just do all that comment, and then if people have stuff that's elsewhere on the agenda, after you close the public hearing, then I go ahead and do the public comment for that part of the meeting. And you'll find that feeling more efficient, and everybody's be happier with the result.
Okay. So we will open up the public hearing portion of the meeting. If you are here and have something to say as far as the public participation, be sure that you've signed in. We have a podium for you to come and speak at. State your name and your address. And we're gonna try and hold you to roughly 3 minutes.
You get to decide. I would say that on the agenda, it says
Can't be
5 minutes, so you'll cap them at 5 minutes, and then they would have to stop talking at 5 minutes unless you wanted to give them an extension, but since you got so many people here, I doubt you'll want to do that.
If you're here representing a group, have one spokesman so that we're not hearing the same thing over and over again. So,
Mike, do you have the sheet, the sign up sheet?
right,
Yeah, can you pass that up here? Thanks.
I welcome all of you that are here. Those that are here for the remainder part of the meeting, bear with us. Sorry, you'll have to kind of sit through some of the extra stuff, but anyway, we welcome you all here, and we're happy to hear your I guess whatever it is that you're here to say. We're happy to hear that. If you have questions, we would like to try and address some of those things too, but mostly right now, the public comment is for you to state what's on your mind. And then we will try to address that the best that we can as village trustees here. So whoever wants to go first.
There was only 4 that checked off that they actually want to do public comment. Is that accurate, or would anybody like to put a check next to their name for public comment? Okay, so what's your name?
Lexi, for.
Is
Do
there
you mind
anybody?
coming up to the podium? That way everybody can.
Do you want me to do it now?
Yeah, actually, can I talk first? I got stuff I gotta get through.
Oh,
and
okay.
then take comment.
Sure.
Is it all right if I sit there just so everybody can?
No, you're
hear
fine,
me?
yes.
So my name is Nick Nelson. I'm with Jacob and Klein. The village has hired our firm to help them establish the TIF district. And so there's kind of a TIF 101 spiel I kind of give to kind of let you guys know how TIF works, what the intention is for the village. And a lot of times when I'm done, I'll have answered most of your questions, but if not, then after I'm done, we can kind of, you guys can fire away. So what TIF is it's just an economic development tool that municipalities have available to try and spur economic development. Okay, so I will go through I'll actually answer 2 of the most common questions I get first. First, I will say It is not an extra real estate tax. You're not gonna pay a dime more in taxes because of the TIF district. Now, that being said, when you get your tax bill, there may very well be a line item for TIF on it. And there may be a dollar amount on that line item, okay? But if you look at the tax rate for the TIF, that's gonna be 0, all right? What that means is that the value of your property went up and the tax revenue attributable to that increase in value, instead of going to taxing bodies, which will be all the other line items on the tax bill, goes into the village's TIF account. And then that money is used for TIF purposes, which we'll go through in a second. Okay, so it's not an extra tax, whether you are in or outside of the TIF district, your tax bill is going to be the same. And if they put the TIF in place and then in 20 years, the TIF goes away, it's not going to impact how much you pay in taxes whatsoever. The other big question I get is, this does not, actually, two other questions. One, this does not mean that the village is going to take anybody's property, okay? And this also by itself does not change the village's zoning code. So you're not going to have a gas station in the middle of a subdivision unless that gas station separately through the normal zoning variance process seeks to get a change in zoning, but it will not happen because of TIF by itself. And then the other thing is that the village is not going to take your property. So there are over 200 sources of eminent domain authority in the Illinois Municipal Code. The TIF Act does contain one of those sources of authority, but in order for the village to use TIF to exercise it, it has to be in the TIF plan, and that's not going to be in the TIF plan. So if they're going to take a property, it's going to be for some other reason. Usually it's a condemnation related thing because of property condition, but it won't be because of TIF. So those are the questions I most commonly get. I'll go through kind of how it works and then open it up for questions. So once the village kind of determines an area, okay, where there's certain blighting characteristics, and the area has to be contiguous, and the blighting characteristics are set forth in the TIF Act. It's not just your dictionary definition of blight, like falling down buildings. There's a lot more characteristics than that. Static assess valuation is one. If there's inadequate utilities, flooding is a big one here. Okay, so there's a lot of different blighting characteristics, but assuming those are prevalent through to a meaningful extent throughout the entire TIF district, you have a valid TIF district. The process to set the TIF up is if the proposed area has at least 75 residential units in it, which this one does, we have what we're doing tonight, a public meeting. We're not going to go through the plan because that's not devised just yet, but we're kind of doing a TIF 101. Let the public know the village's intention to put in a TIF district and then take comments and questions. After that, then our office then will submit a copy of the draft plan to the village. It'll be available for public inspection by anybody that wants to come check it out. And then after that, there's going to be a meeting of the joint review board. The joint review board is made up of the impacted taxing bodies. So the school district, the county, the village gets a representative, did I say township, community college, there may be one or two more. And at that meeting, we're gonna go through the contents of the plan. We're gonna go through the qualifying characteristics, and then the joint review board members vote. And they're not voting as a matter of public policy, whether they think it's a good idea. What they're voting on is two things. One, they're voting that the blighting characteristics are prevalent to a meaningful extent, and we'll go through those with the taxing bodies. And then two, they're voting on that the village is following the correct statutory procedure to put the TIF in place, and you make sure that that's being done. So if the taxing bodies have a no vote, okay, they are to provide a written report of their objections to the village, and then the village and the taxing bodies get 30 days to try and work out those differences. At the end of that 30-day period, hopefully things are worked out, but if not, the village can go ahead and proceed with establishing the TIF district anyway. Okay, so it's just part of the process. After the joint review board meeting, then there's one other public forum. There's a public hearing. And at that public hearing is just like what we're doing tonight, except we'll go through the contents of the plan, the different costs that are eligible for reimbursement, and kind of we'll have a better sense of kind of what it is the village is wanting to do with the TIF district. So After that public hearing, then it proceeds to, the village board voting to approve the TIF district. And provided they do that, you have a TIF district. Now, from that day forward, what that means is that all of the assessed valuation within that boundary area is essentially frozen at a base value. And so the taxing bodies will continue to get all the tax revenue they've always gotten up to that base value, right? It doesn't take any money away from the taxing bodies. But as the valuation of those properties increases because of development or just natural growth, the revenue attributable to that increase, instead of going to the taxing bodies, goes into the village's TIF account, and then that money has to be spent on TIF eligible project costs. And those are costs that are eligible as defined in the act and what's in the plan that they can spend. Okay. The TIF will be in place. TIFs are usually in place for 23 years. The legislature in Illinois can extend a TIF district for an additional 12 years. Through special legislation, and then lately they've been doing second 12-year extensions. But essentially, to get either extension, you have to have unanimous taxing body approval to get that. And so, and then the taxing bodies can veto an extension if that's where they're at that time. So, what the village can do with the money, again, it's all going to be governed by the plan. But essentially, there's two different types of projects that the village can spend TIF money on: public projects, which would be your infrastructure improvements. So water lines, sewer lines, flooding issues, streets, sidewalks, any capital improvement to a public space. All that is more of a public infrastructure cost that the village can undertake. The other, actually, there's two others beyond that. The other main use of funds is to incentivize private developers to undertake development projects. And so it can be any type of development as long as that development is provided for in the TIF plan. There's no theoretical difference between a residential project, a commercial project, an industrial project. As far as how TIF works and the mechanics of it, they're all the same as long as the costs are eligible. And the developer incurs those costs, they can be reimbursed. Okay, so there's no such thing as like a residential TIF or commercial TIF. It all operates the same, and how the increments generated operates the same. So, so if a developer wants to do something and get incentivized for it, they'll come to the village, and this is all negotiated on a project by project basis. State to the village what its need is. There's some negotiation of a redevelopment agreement, and then if it's something that the village wants to incentivize, they'll approve the agreement at a board meeting, and then the developer can go ahead with its project. So, it's really all I have as far as the process to establish it and kind of how it works. The one other thing I would say is that another question we get asked a lot is property owners generally don't have any say in whether or not they're in a TIF district. With that being said, there's no downfall to being in a TIF district. There's only potential benefits. So I will say the area that's being contemplated right now does include a lot of existing residential homes. All right. But the reason that is not because the village is necessarily intending that, you know, those homes are going to be part of a project. However, in order for the village to be able to spend money on public improvements, the area that they're spending the money on has to be in the TIF district. So while they may not have an intention to do anything with your house, they may need to do street work or flooding remediation or some type of public improvement. And so your house is in for that reason. Or the other reason is it could be for purposes of contiguity to get from one part of town to another. It has to be contiguous area. So so I guess that's all I have to say. So I'll take any questions or comments or concerns.
Once the plan is established, are you gonna be able to change it, amend it, whatever the case may be? Is that, what's the process?
Yeah, so once the plan is on file, it depends on where we're at in the process. So right up until the board adopts the TIF district, the plan can be amended and changed. If it's certain types of changes, we may have to do this public meeting, and depending on if the joint review board meeting's been held, we may have to do that part of the process over again, but it can be done. And generally, we try and be as inclusive as possible in that plan, so we don't have to do that. But we can take things out, and we can take parcels out without having to start the process over again. But if we want to add costs, change the nature of the projects, or add parcels, Then we're going to have to do another public meeting and then possibly another joint review board meeting if that hasn't taken place yet. And then once the TIF is established, the village can amend that plan. But the process to do that is just like doing a new TIF all over again. You have to have a public meeting, joint review board meeting, public hearing, fresh ordinances to make those certain types of changes.
So this is supposed to be the public meeting to decide whether we're proceeding ahead?
No, this is a public meeting to let the public know the village's intention to have a TIF district. To kind of go through what TIF is and to answer, take any questions or respond to any comments or concerns. So after tonight, nothing's official yet. It won't be until the very end of the process, after the joint review board meeting, the next public hearing. And then there's going to be an agenda where the village board would approve the ordinances to officially adopt the TIF district.
So what's the purpose of the TIF district in general? I mean, yes, I see that you guys want to get some commercial development. That's nothing new. That's been talked about since I've lived here. And we're kind of locked on residential development as well, for reasons that most of us in here know. The flooding issue, the water issue's been here since I've been in town myself. So what is this gonna do? Specifically, what are we doing with this that's gonna address those issues and get accomplished what you're trying to do? I don't have any knowledge of what you're trying to do, so asking me to agree with you on something that is not very well spelled out probably won't happen. So I'm asking for that information.
I understand.
Made
So
public.
there, the plan is going to be pretty all-inclusive and accommodate any type of development, like all types of development. And we really don't want to limit what the village can do with the TIF money and, you know, they just want development plain and simple. So there's going to be some residential projects that can be accommodated, commercial, retail, not sure industrial will fit, just 'cause I don't know if it fits in the zoning, but to the extent it can be, there'll be an allowance for industrial projects. Like I said, we're still finalizing the draft of the plan. But it is entirely developer driven. So if a developer is not willing to do something, then, you know, nothing's going to happen. But to the extent that this is just a tool that the village has at its disposal that it can use to try and incentivize it. That's the purpose of it. So without saying too much, because it's still in the very preliminary stages, there have been a couple of developers that are interested in having a project here if the TIF district is put in place. But if the TIF doesn't happen, the project's not going to happen. So that's kind of where it's at. But based on historical precedent, there has not been much development in this area in probably the last 15 years at least. And we tried, you know, the village tried to do this process 8 years ago, and there's been nothing new that's happened in that 8 years. So without something being available, that trend is likely to continue. So
clearly you guys have something in mind. What is it that we have in mind for this development? Otherwise you wouldn't have proposed this part of it in the first place. Stop
That isn't
hiding
true.
behind the vagueness that I understand you're a lawyer, so you're gonna do that. The people that are sitting here want to know where you're going with it and how it's gonna affect what we're living in the middle of. That's
Alright,
what we're asking.
To
for.
start with, this is a tool to give the opportunities for economic development.
Right, but
or
you didn't have this
residential.
tool. You
Excuse
didn't-
me,
you
I'm
did not- hey,
speaking.
Whoa.
Stop,
You work for us.
I'm in charge
No,
of
you're not.
the meeting.
These people are in charge.
Mark,
These people are in
We're
charge.
running the meeting.
We are asking you
all right,
for
If
real
you want
information
to
and you're not
speak,
giving us any information.
you
That's
can
what we're
stop
having a
right now.
problem with.
Let her finish.
I'm speaking. You listen.
No, you do
Then
not
you
tell
can
me how to
leave.
do things. No,
You
ma'am.
can leave.
I have the right to address you and I don't.
I
You do
have the
not
right
have
to
the
run
right
the
to tell me
meeting.
how to address
I
you.
have the right to run the meeting. I'm running this meeting.
There's really no plans project wise
And that's-
right now
It's just.
that we have on,
We have
on the
some
books or
ideas,
anything.
but
There's
we have to have
ideas.
this tool in place.
Yeah, to make anything
make
go
it, yeah.
forward.
So thank you for actually answering the question.
Well, I think she
didn't
was gonna
ask for
try.
a big bullshit. I asked for a
There's no
direct
bullshit,
answer.
it's just a tool that we need if we're gonna grow. I mean, these schools need help. We're down, how many kids are we down, Lance?
I'll wait till I come up there.
Okay.
That's got nothing to do with
It
local
does.
Okay.
circumstances.
It does.
That's got to do with the state and their
No.
BS
A
that's
TIF
causing the
district-
problem with people
A
leaving the
TIF
area.
district,
This has always been an area that turns over
I'm not
regularly.
gonna talk over you.
I'm not-
Do you wanna hear
I'm
an
actually
answer or
addressing Max
not?
right now, not you, ma'am.
We're good.
He asked me a question or he answered something, so I said it to him. The reality is, these people are asking you specifically, what are you doing and why? That's the reason that you got voted into the mayor's
And if you will
office
be
in the first
quiet,
place,
we
ma'am.
can explain to you what the process is and what we're here for and how it works. We are the most transparent board that has ever been here. This is what a public hearing is all about, is to explain to you what we're doing. There is no specific development in mind right this very moment. We are doing our best to make ourselves available to offer opportunities to bring in developers to be interested in investing in our community. We have done nothing for 20 years. We have sat here, we have no economic development. Our residential growth dried up 20 years ago. This is one tool in the toolbox to be used to possibly incentivize a developer to come into our community. What that development may or may not be, we don't know yet because we have to find those people and we're in the process of trying to do that. We have an economic developer or an economic consultant that we have been going out trying to market our community to bring people to be interested in developing in our community, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial. But right now, we have no tools to try encourage them to come here. Obviously, we're not doing something right because we've sat here with nothing coming our way. So we're trying to make improvements in the community. We're doing our best to upgrade our infrastructure so that we will be ready for development. And this is a tool to be used to try and help it to happen. So no, we can't give you an answer on what that development is right now because we don't have anything. They're waiting for us to do it. We've got a couple of people who've shown some interest, but until we're able to reach out to them and say, well, you know, we have a TIF district with this incentive, we could potentially do this, this, and this. But until you have something in place, we have nothing to offer other than what we currently have been offering for 20 years. And that's been absolutely nothing. So we have infrastructure that if we get something going on in our commercial district up against the interstate where is prime, potential there, right on the interstate. We've underutilized our commercial district for many, many years. We have infrastructure that if we do develop there, that we're going to make some improvements. 3rd Street and Grand, if you have some kind of potential, or if you have a commercial development comes in that's bringing in a tax base to our community, not only will you have that tax money that can help in our other infrastructure, our parks, our streets, our sidewalks, that can be used to improve the streets there. But having the TIF money also can be used for the infrastructure costs to help. It's like, which comes first? You know, if they build it, will they come? I don't know, but you have to have things in place to make it happen.
So is
I
this
mean, we can
intended
sit
to-
around and wait for another 20 years for something to happen and we'll
Is
see
this
what
intended
happens.
to
We'll
finance
sit there
the
and just
hotel
wait.
that was proposed? Because the areas that you guys that I have heard were proposed for that, this TIF district goes right up to the edge of that property. Is that the intent of this? And if it is, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Well, let's stop kind of hiding behind things. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
So, if we can move on after, right?
Yes.
So, the reason why this is being considered is that there's a natural gap in our marketplace between what developers can pay and, and what the expectations are for the property from property owners in terms of how much money they want to get out of it. But then two, the infrastructure costs, which are really high. And so there's no specific project that's been approved or that's very far along at this point. We are trying to recruit people, but the reason why this is being addressed is that TIP is designed to meet that natural gap and fill that gap so things can be induced, so to speak. But if we're ready to move on.
And I would reiterate in terms of transparency, any money that goes to a developer has to be done by an agreement. That agreement has to be approved by ordinance. The board has to approve those ordinances at a public meeting. So everything's going to be on an agenda. There'll be the opportunity to discuss it and provide comments, and there's not going to be anything that happens under the table. And that's on the front end of a project. On the back end of money being spent, each year, the village has its audits done. One component of that audit is an audit of the TIP fund. And so all the dollars that are being spent get accounted for. And then once the audit is done, they provide the TIP part of that to our office. We use that to complete a state of Illinois comptroller's report for the TIP district. And then that report gets sent to the comptroller, uploaded online, and is publicly accessible by anybody. And then that's the information that we, the Joint Review Board has two functions. One is the beginning, and then the other function is each year we have a meeting, the Joint Review Board, to go over the kind of progress of the TIF. And so what we do is we go through those annual reports each year. So all the money that's being spent will be publicly disclosed. And so there's no hiding it.
Well, it seems interesting that you have a public meeting that you publicize, but like an hour ago, you publicized that you are actually proceeding ahead without having this meeting completed first. If
We're
I'm
not
right,
asking for your consent. We're asking for your concerns.
then you probably should have asked us before you made the move ahead.
We don't need your approval to move ahead. You elected a board.
Yes, you're right. We elected you and
Right.
everybody else up there, and if you guys act in a manner that's not in our interest, you
Then,
can be
then
removed.
that can be done at the voting polls. I mean, I'm just up here because I got elected. I feel like the TIP is a great idea and I'm gonna vote for it. If anybody wants to know, I'm voting for it, so. But we want to hear your concerns,
You
but
probably
we're
should have
not
heard our
going
concerns
anywhere. We're
prior
stuck in
to
mud.
moving ahead.
Yes.
No,
That's the purpose of this meeting, is to get your
Then
consent.
you shouldn't have moved ahead before you had this meeting.
it's a process. This is the procedures and the process that you have to do to develop a TIF district. So it's not anything that we have to go out and ask in advance to do. For one, that's not what we do as a board. We don't go and ask everything that we do ahead of time. But once we decide to move in a certain direction, we do have certain procedures that we have to follow. And this is the number one step of the procedure, is to try and get the information out to the public. And to be honest with you, we've been talking about this for actually 2 years. The school, our administrator and the two school administrators have been in conversation for 2 years, along with the school board of both the high school and the middle school and grade school. So it's a long process. And we try to be as transparent as we can to get all the information out there. I know Nora has reported on it numerous times that we're discussing the TIF district. And so, you know, there has been opportunities, if you had questions or things, that you could have come forward and asked about it. But this proceedings that we're doing tonight is just the very beginning of several other portions of trying to develop a TIF district. And so this is your opportunity to find out the information, to ask questions, and then you will be better prepared to fully understand what a TIF district is and what our hopes are on what it can bring to the community.
Just real quick, Tammy, is this gonna come up on a referendum?
I'm sorry,
Is this gonna come up on a referendum to vote on?
no,
Okay.
it's, yeah, it's not anything where we're raising taxes, so it would not be a referendum type of a situation, so. Yes,
I had no intention to speak. I didn't check the box or anything, so. Kind of nervous, so bear with me here. So I didn't know anything about this district. I didn't talk to anybody on the board or anything like that. But, I mean, I do own the land across from the middle school. So just like to give everybody some background information on growth of the town. They're exactly right. I have been approached multiple. I was just approached this weekend. Someone came to my house. Like, when are you gonna build this place? It's evolved into, our focus is gonna be for seniors, like, 55 and over, because that's the people that are just beating down my door to have a place to live and get out of their house. Widows, this person that came over this weekend had a stroke, stuff like that. They want that place done over there. I want to start it next year, as soon as possible. You spoke about infrastructure, like for developers. I was supposed to get started years ago, and there was a big hang up, that was outside of the city's control, so I couldn't start years ago. And everything else that happened, and the biggest two things that happened to me is inflation and interest rates. And so as a potential developer, it's crazy what I'm looking at just to put in the infrastructure. So when you said the infrastructure, for a minute I had to speak. And I don't know anything about the TIF district. Like I don't know that much. I'm just a constructor. I don't know that much. But if there is the ability for the city to help a developer with infrastructure like me, that takes tremendous pressure off my decisions to build this place. Because most of you know me, though you don't, I run a small family business. I get hung out here to dry. I mean, my family goes bankrupt. So long story short, putting in infrastructure is the biggest cost that the developer faces. And infrastructure doesn't pay my bills. That's not the rent, So I just want you guys to know that there's a huge demand from people who are already in this town, who are seniors, who don't want to leave this town. They don't want to leave their homes. They're widows, they're people who raise their families here. They don't want to leave. And they have a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house. They want to downsize. And them being able to move over to our place opens up 30, 35 properties here in town. I know that's not new houses, but that is also possibly new families growing in, moving into the school district, helping the schools. And that's just me and my little part trying to do my neck of the woods. So I don't know that much about it. I'll be willing to learn, but if there's anything that the city can do through a TIF to help a developer, it does help the community. And that's just, and I had my project for a couple of years on the back burner as something, and I came to the city from day one, and I told Tamara, I said, I want this to make the city beautiful. I don't want to put anything over there that's not gonna make this city better. And so, I didn't intend to speak, and sorry if that didn't make sense, but from a developer standpoint, everything that they're saying would help incentivize a developer like me to get the ball rolling.
For what it's worth, there is gonna be assisted living and age restricted housing projects proposed in this plan. Like I said, nothing specific other than, you mentioning it now, but that was already gonna be in the plan. So I would encourage you to, if this goes through, ultimately, there'll be a developer application that the village has. So I definitely ask to get that, fill that out, and then they can evaluate your project and see what they'd be willing to do for you.
Can I interject something? And it's just like some of the infrastructure, give you an idea of the cost. I questioned on the drainage from our engineers on that, and I said, look, you figured this awful high from what I remember. Before we started this TIF, when they talked about putting storm sewer lines, they were figuring at a cost of $750 a foot, running foot, to go ahead and put that in for the big tiles. Now they're figuring at $1,350. I'm not jaw dropped. And they said that, and then explained to me the cost of like one piece of pipe was $100 a foot. And it's just like, It's gone up tremendously. And that's all this TIF is just a tool. There's no candy out there for any kind of business or anything at this time. It's just looking at the tools to kind of get it in place, but where you go ahead and if you go ahead and help the drainage, the other infrastructure in other places in the interim, it's a benefit. So, you know, nothing I know if we're hiding anything to go ahead and give somebody a carrot. It's just a tool.
Those that had marked themselves as speaking, if you would like to come up and speak, go ahead and state your name and,
I'm on read, so. Good evening, my name is Lance Landick. I'm the superintendent at St. Joseph CCSD 169, which is the grade school and the middle school district here in town. I'm here tonight to comment on the proposed TIF in the village. This part I just added. There has been so much already discussed tonight that I'd love to comment or reply to, but I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to stay on script. During our January school board meeting, I shared with the board that in 2010, our enrollment for K-8 was approximately 910 students. Now in 2025, our K-8 enrollment is approximately 720 students, or almost 200 students less. We, the board and administration, identify that our enrollment is declining and we will continue to do so unless something's done. However, we struggle with the fact that the projects are being done with tax dollars intended to support the schools that as a result of the TIF are being diverted from the schools to the village to pay for these projects. Saying that, the district has not decided if they're for or against the TIF yet, but that's just the struggle they're fighting. Although I'm new to the community, I understand the infrastructure improvements needed to support residential growth have been discussed for many years. I also understand that establishing a TIF district has also been discussed in the past. Although I was not here for those discussions, I had heard from both sides of the table on how those went. I appreciate that during our most recent discussions that Mr. Hackney, representing the village, has been very open to discussions with and ideas coming from the school districts. The primary purpose of me speaking tonight is to make sure that you, as the village board, fully understand the financial impact a TIF district has on school districts. When the TIF district is established, much like Nick said earlier, a cap or a ceiling is set on all taxing bodies. Outside of an agreement with the village, any new tax revenue through natural growth or new construction, commercial or residential, after the cap is set, is diverted from the taxing bodies to the village. In working with Mr. Hackney, we have mutually developed an agreement that would allow the schools to receive a portion of that new tax revenue above and beyond the cap, but not 100% of the funds that we would receive if the TIF were not in place. The main thing I want you to understand is that any of those funds we would receive that are above the cap and received back from the village per the agreement are restricted on how they can be used. Per state law, those funds can only be used for capital projects. Those funds cannot be used for salaries, benefits, or supplies. So let's imagine for a minute the TIF is in place and new houses are built in St. Joe. As our enrollment increases, we would need more classrooms and more teachers. We have plenty of classroom space. That's not an issue. However, we would have to hire additional teachers, and the funds we would receive back as a part of the TIF agreement cannot be used for that. Again, those funds can only be used for capital improvements. Based on the numbers of a proposed new residential project that was shared with the schools from the village, and you have that, I asked, did you hand those out, Joe? Yeah. I have been able to figure out how much money the schools would, quote unquote, lose out on as a result of the TIF. I understand that these are proposed numbers, nothing's in stone, as we've all heard tonight and understand. But since this is the only plan that includes numbers or projections that have been shared with us, it is all we have to base our financial projections off of. In the time allotted, I cannot do a deep dive into that spreadsheet. So I invite any of you to contact me at the school if you'd like to sit down and discuss this further. What I would like to point out tonight, if you look at it, are the yellow columns. If the TIF was not in place, the schools here in town would receive approximately $7 million in quote unquote new tax revenue over the 23-year span. However, remember though, that because of the TIF, tax revenues are capped, and without agreement, we receive none of that money. Luckily, we have discussed an agreement, but even then, with the agreement in place, that addresses new residential taxes. The schools will only receive approximately $5 million of that $7 million, which is represented in the blue columns. Over the life of the TIF, the grade school district will lose out on approximately $925,000, and the high school district will lose out on approximately $1,050,000, which is represented in those peak columns. Please keep in mind that what I just discussed pertains only to lost revenue from any new residential development. It does not include lost revenue from any new commercial development that may occur in the 23 years TIF is in place. As a taxing body that will be heavily impacted by the enactment of this TIF, we ask the village board to consider the financial impact it will have on the school districts, which is why many people say they choose to live here. Also, we would like to see a more detailed plan on projected costs and timelines tied to how revenues from the TIF will be used. Finally, we would like to have assurances that revenues from the TIF are used towards new development, not to simply upgrade or repair existing infrastructure. I thank you for your collaborative efforts for the last year and a half during this process, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. 4:48.
Anyone else?
Was a, Lexi Morris.
Hi, I'm Nikki Forrest. I'm one of the residents here. I live out on Water Street. My biggest concern that I wanted to bring attention to is the floodplain maps are 12 years old now. So those of us that are living in that side of town, a huge portion of the TIF district is in the floodplains, and it's likely that even more of it is now in the floodplains because it's likely to only increase. My biggest concern with seeing this, I don't have any opinion on the TIF. I understand we need development here. I'd love to see more kids and activities and things like that. But my biggest concern is it's going to make it very difficult for developers to build in this specific area that's been mapped out because of the floodplains. So most developers would need to prove that any building that they're doing, even if it's outside of the lines that are on the floodplain, that it isn't going to negatively impact the houses that are already there and cause us to flood more. As I said, I live on Water Street, our street floods all the time. I'm sure there's infrastructure projects that are planned. I know you guys are redoing Elm Street, and as much fun as it is to drive around that constantly. Just constantly. I love that we're doing improvements there, and it's nice to see some of the roads done. But my biggest concern is just, it's gonna be really difficult to build over there, and I think probably the absolute biggest thing is those maps haven't been updated, so there's no way to even see how bad it is right now without those maps being updated and how bad it's gonna be for developers over there. So I just wanted to bring attention to that. I was lucky enough to be around for the last set of TIF meetings, so this is fun, second time around.
I love it.
Susan.
Susan, did you want to speak?
I am giving my time to one of my board members.
Okay.
Okay, I have nothing like Mr. Lineback did, sorry. I am Dawn Wilson from the village, or not, sorry, from the village, I live in the village, but from the library board. And so we appreciate as a board that Tammy and Joe came to our meeting and explained everything to us and provided us with information. We greatly appreciate them walking through. We understand that as you guys make a TIF, that you have no requirement to meet with the schools, to meet with us as a library board, or the fire department, or anything, that you are looking out for us a little bit, in a way, but we are concerned. Just the fact that if we build all these new houses, that we won't have the money, that we would originally without the TIF. So just want to let you know that our concern, if you do give us a deal and give us a portion, the concern then is still it can be used for capital improvements and not the materials that we would need. So.
I should have mentioned it earlier, and this is partially in response to what you said, and then the superintendent. So one thing that the village board does have to satisfy when we're at the end of the process and they're approving the TIF is they have to find the development wouldn't occur but for having an incentive like the TIF district in place. And so I can appreciate the superintendent's numbers and both of yours concerns, but this column in the yellow, if there's no TIF, there's no numbers in this column. It's going to continue to be zero for everybody. So, and then there's really for your tax bases don't go up. Obviously, nothing new to glom onto. The flooding issues don't get resolved, and so the TIF is important, and getting those tax bases to increase. And
Yes.
yeah, it's gonna take some pain from everybody to allow that to happen, but the intention is in 20 years. We have all this new development and everybody's in a much better space because, you know, it's been 20 years, there's been nothing. And so everybody's hurting. So I would say that, and then to address your specific concerns, there are different types of agreements we can do and, you know, in the school agreement, there's different mechanisms for getting payments to taxing bodies. So one is a capital cost reimbursement, and this is all laid out in the TIF Act. So the village board can work one-on-one with the taxing body with an agreement. And if it's that type of reimbursement, that has to be for capital expenditure. The other way to get taxing bodies money is through what's called declaration of surplus funds. And so how that works is, and with the draft of the school agreement, there is part of it that has this mechanism in it. Where in a particular year, the village board can get TIF money and they can decide to declare some portion of that as surplus. And how that works is that money they declare as surplus goes back to the county. And then the county distributes that pro rata to all the taxing bodies according to their share of the tax bill. If you get that type of money, that can be used for anything, salaries and administrative costs and overhead. So, but again, if you have a specific need and we need to, you know, we want to help the library with book or, you know,
Materials.
some specific, you know, you're kind of wanting to do one-on-one with them. And the other thing I would offer is, you know, right now there's no money in the TIF fund and there won't be money if there's no development. Okay, so, but if we fast forward a few years and the TIF is successful and say you don't have an agreement in place right away, if there's, you know, if there's funds available in a few years, you have a specific need, you can come to the village board and say, look, we need to, you know, do this thing or replace the roof of the library building. And then they can do one-off agreements for years. So, and that happens a lot. Actually, Homer is a perfect example of this because they don't have any ongoing agreements with their taxing bodies, but their TIF has done well to this point. They're getting in the later years. And so every year, the fire district, the township and school, they come with specific needs and the village has been very generous in meeting those needs. And it's every year about this time, I get, you know, prepare these agreements for these taxing bodies and they do it and it works really well. So it's a pretty well-oiled machine in that way. So, and there's been no problems.
Can I ask for clarification? Is it that you can do both of those? A preset determined amount ahead of time, like what you've set a contract with the schools, and then as well come to
Agreements
them?
from the gamut, whatever is up to your imaginations between parties of the agreement.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And that's one thing that I will point out from 8 years ago when the first attempt at a TIF district was attempted. We were very unprepared as a village. At that point, I know BJ and the board at the time really didn't have a real good understanding of how the TIF would work and didn't work. It was mostly generated by a developer at the time. It was kind of his suggestion. And so we were kind of thrown into it unprepared. We didn't have the talks with the schools in advance and there was a lot there that could have been desired. We didn't have an administrator on board to handle the day-to-day meetings and discussions and things to keep things moving forward. And so this time around, that's why we approached it in a much different approach, a different manner to reach out to the schools first and the other taxing bodies to try and get people to understand why we're doing it and what it really means. I don't know that a lot of people fully understand what a TIF district even is. It's we've never done one here in St. Joe. Surprising enough, we're one of the very few communities that have never done a TIF district. So it's, you know, it's been out there for quite some time. It's just never been something that the village has ever, you know, talked about doing too much. And I said our first attempt was not successful for a lot of different reasons, but since we haven't had the growth and have absolutely no movement at all for 20 years, we just felt it was time to look and see what's out there to try and help move the village forward. If you know, if you don't have, we're not trying to be Muhammad or any of these other communities you know, we're trying to do what's best for the village of St. Joe. And keeping our schools in mind, our fire district, all of our other taxing bodies in mind the best. That's why they've, you know, come up with a formula that will be beneficial to them. But as we all know, if we do nothing, nothing's going to happen and nothing's probably going to change. So even if we do the TIF district, there's no guarantees it will be a successful TIF district. If that happens, then nobody gains anything out of it at all. Everything just stays as status quo. So I don't know how many of you might have caught the article. It was at Christmas time. It was the front page of the News Gazette. Fisher is a community that is being quite successful with their TIF district. We've made copies of that article if anyone's interested. To me, it's a prime example of what a TIF district can do for your community, not only commercially, but residentially. And my understanding with their TIF district had no agreements in advance with any of their taxing bodies, but they, you know, just like Homer, have the opportunity for those other taxing bodies to approach them and say, hey, by the way, you know, because, you know, there is this additional growth in the schools or whatever it might be, you know, we really could use a little help here in this thing. It's the same thing, you know, as I'll use the fire department as an example. If you had assisted living come into the community within the TIF district, that would be a great opportunity. It's like, obviously, they're probably going to get more calls going to assisted living, and that would be where they could approach, you know, the village and say, hey, we're going to need some assistance here because we're getting all these extra calls and we just can't afford to deal with that. We're going to need some help. And that's where the increment money would help come up with a plan to help the fire department, those things. So we understand your concerns. Is doing something different is always scary. It's, you know, things that, you know, we've not done before, and there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of chatter about what it is and what it isn't. This process that we're doing now is hopefully getting us to the point where people can understand it better. And, you know, just know that we're just trying to do, as a village board, trying to do what we think is best to try and help benefit all the residents in the community. We have people who, matter of fact, I see someone sitting here in our audience tonight who has a request for something park related. We are always getting, I mean, we have mowing and weed control on our agenda tonight to approve. And at some point, we have to share all those funds. Our general funds have to be spread out in a lot of different directions. And if you're not increasing your tax base, it makes it harder and harder to meet those needs. And so if we have absolutely no growth in the community, economically or residentially, eventually all the taxing bodies are going to lose out. The schools, with the numbers going down, they're going to consider, I mean, they're at some point, even without the kids, their cost still goes up. So at some point, they're going to need something to help sustain what they have. We have excellent schools. I mean, we appreciate the fact that we have awesome school districts here. We have a great community to live in, and I plan on living here probably the rest of my life. So I no longer have children in school. Doesn't look like I'm gonna have grandchildren come to school here. But I still plan to live here. I want my community to be nice. It's a great community. That means I like to have nice sidewalks to walk. I like to have streets that are fixed, and I like to have great parks to go to. And that's all part of having a great community, but it takes money to do that. And at some point, we have to figure out how we can improve that, and increasing our tax base hopefully by getting some commercial growth into the community, gosh, even the sewer plant was a huge expense, but it was something we had to do. We had no choice. We were at capacity. Whether we have growth or no growth, we still were at the point that if we wanted to continue flushing our toilets, we needed to do something. And otherwise EPA was going to be here telling us that we needed to do it their way. So, we're in the process. That's going to be finished come fall. So we're making improvements. Stormwater. I think with some of the improvements that we're making, I think you will see a change on Water Street.
That'd be great.
Yes, a lot of the infrastructure that's being worked with the sewer plant, we're improving the stormwater with that project at the same time. You will see a difference on that end of town. And that's all progress that we're making, but we still have limited funds. And to help the cost with the sewer plant, I don't want to pay more for my sewer like everybody else in town. I don't like to pay extra money for flushing my toilet. But if we don't grow our tax base, guess what? My sewer bill, like everyone else's, is going to have to go up because the cost is going to continue to go up to run that sewer plant. We own it. We have to run it. You have to run it like a business. So this is just, like I said, it's a tool in a toolbox. I used this example earlier this evening at the township meeting. Using a tool, and I said, I'm not trying to be super simple-minded, but I can't stress you enough that a TIF is just a tool. It's not an extra tax. It's not doing anything with your property, changing the value or anything. It's only to improve what you're currently doing. So the example I use, I get in trouble with my husband all the time. Dawn's gonna laugh because she's heard the story already. I will reach for a screwdriver and try to get a screw out of something on the wall with the screwdriver. Drives my husband crazy because he comes in with the drill and with the proper attachments in, and he says, what are you doing? If you use the right tool, you can get it done 3 times faster without screwing up the woodwork at the same time. So if you don't use the proper tools, you're probably not going to get the job done as efficiently and properly as you should have done. And I know that's a crazy example to use, but I look at it the same here. We have a tool available to us. The Village of St. Joe has never used that tool. We've been using the screwdriver for way too long. It's time for us to look at better tools, better power tools to hopefully get us someplace better than where we're at right now. I'm not saying our community is bad now. We have an awesome community, but I want to keep it that way. And I think if we don't use the proper tools to somehow get us over the hump, then we're going to keep gouging into the woodwork and not get the job done. That's my spiel.
And you're way over your 5 minutes.
Is there Susan Smith? Did you want to speak?
I would like the lady that lives over on water. Living over on Thomas Drive, we get huge flooding over there. Again, if infrastructure is gonna go in and the field is at an angle, it's gonna come this direction. And we flood bad enough the way it is. So again, it's just a concern of what is gonna be put in and how is it going to affect, hopefully in a positive way. But when you're only have one way in and out of your subdivision and it's underwater, and even your 4-wheel drive truck is, bumper deep in it, trying to get out. It is a concern that more drainage coming this direction will affect our living areas in a negative manner.
I think anything going in has to be taken care of, correct? I mean, you can't push it somewhere else. You have to be able to take care of it with a retention pond or draining some other way. So that won't be an issue.
And that does what makes our infrastructure more expensive too, that we do have strict stormwater requirements in the village for that very reason. But in the process, hopefully with improving our infrastructure, meaning the stormwater too, that upsizing some of those tiles will relieve some of that pressure. And that's some of the focus that we're doing right now on this end of town, the older part of town, where a lot of those tiles are old clay tiles and things, and that they definitely need to be improved. So that's what we're trying to do. So.
Got it. Chris,
Yeah, he's already spoken.
You already heard me.
and then, let's see, I think that's it.
Joe, can I say, I'll take 2 minutes. All right, I emailed you earlier, but I didn't tomorrow. Just real quick, I'm Brian Brooks, Superintendent of High School District. I was a part of discussions with TIP 8 years ago, came into, and I won't regurgitate this stuff Lance has talked about, to save everybody a lot of time, but I want to thank you. It's been way better this time around. I feel like in the school district, we appreciate being at the table, having those discussions. As Joe knows, as Tammy knows, we're in the same boat as a great school district. We're not necessarily, we're still 50-50 in terms of support, not because we don't appreciate all that you're doing, not because we don't think we need growth. Residential tips are just they're just scary to school districts when you're talking 23 years, and they can work. I agree with all that you said, but we do appreciate the fact that how it's been handled this time around, as opposed to last time, and being in the room and having those discussions. And just to clarify a couple of comments from a couple of board meetings ago that when we watched, I felt like we were, as a school district, we're kind of slanted, in a negative tone, that we were being greedy, asking for too much. It's the residential piece, and we're just fighting for our students, our school districts. It was alluded to about how much we were asking for in tax levy dollars. The facts are the facts. I mean, I took over in 2015 as school district superintendent here. Our tax rate was 201. We dropped it 12 cents in those 10 years. It's $1.89 in 2024, the projected rate. So we're not asking our public for more tax dollars. We don't want to ask our public for more tax dollars. Everybody here in Windsor pays plenty of that. And so I just want to make sure we're clear there. So I really appreciate how it's been handled. Joe has been a huge help for us, even when we disagreed. It's always been professional. We appreciate it. We really appreciate that compared to 8 years ago. So thank you.
Right. All right, let me make sure we follow. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know that you guys have maybe discussed this in former meetings, but can you speak to the boundaries of the proposed TIF district a little bit more, and maybe why it only affects a portion of the town and not the whole town?
Sorry, I have a handout. I didn't get it to so many, but it's loosely going to be this.
Right.
But why are there some areas that are like, yeah,
So, the reason the map can be composed, or, how we get to these maps, one, it has to qualify. So a lot of the residential pieces to the north, not that you have new residential, but that's the newest residential. And it's probably, a lot of it's probably not going to qualify. There's not a lot of blight, there's not a lot of characteristics that we can use to qualify that area. So that's a reason to leave that area. And I think the infrastructure there is probably okay too. And then otherwise, you just don't want to have it, some towns do, some towns have the entire cities in the TIF district. But this is probably not one of those places where, based on some of the feedback, that would work as well. So so you have to limit it in some way. And then really it's just, we're trying to get to where we think the development's going to be, and 2, where we need to use the money. And those can be 2 different areas, but it's kind of this combination of figuring it out. So I'm guessing the flooding areas are in this, the development areas are in this, and different types of development. So we don't want to just focus on residential, brought in as much commercial space as we could. I don't know if there's industrial sites, but there as well. So it's kind of how maps generally are devised.
Answer your question. Yeah. Right, if there's no any further questions, then do we just close out the public?
Yeah, you close this part of the public hearing and then Gonna go back and do your normal routine for the rest of your meeting.
So I guess we're officially closing the public hearing. Thank you for your attendance. Joe, all of us are here to answer any questions at any time, so if you have other questions.
Mayor. That we would normally have. Go ahead and answer that.
You make money in any green back.
At this point, I'm not aware that we would, but if we did, we would let that down.
Oh, this is all, no, I tried to behave myself. Yeah. No, I was finding my words, so I
He was actually. She said he seen it on Facebook.
We are, that's correct. We've been backwards. I almost said that. No, so I think.
Very big shoes to fill. Yeah. You gotta bounce from the back. Did you get every word?
All of it. I tried very diligently.
Somebody playing a prank on you, or? That being said, I'm a 49er, so especially 1 year. You know that you're. City, you know. It's areas where dogs. Like Pleasant.
Short meeting.
Now,
Short meeting.
actually, I had one that's too that.
If I got a score.
Yes, I would like.
Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah, no.
Well,
As good as it sounds.
That's
All right. We've done other types of games by more than that. It'll be fine, man.
All right,
Mark, I tried to drag it out to give you
That's
that
a
water
very
on your
important
phone.
question, what dealing with
No.
basketball score.
I did check the score at half.
27, beginning of the second half.
all right, I'm gonna, quickly open up, is there any other regular public comment? That's on this, anything in general besides TIP district? If not, I'm gonna move on to the rest of the meeting, if that's all right. So, going once, going twice, right? Our consent agenda, we have our, board meetings from the January 28th meeting, the treasurer's report, investment recommendations and approval of bills. Is there any questions for Debbie or Joe on any of those? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I do have one question. I forgot to ask Joe today. I noticed we had plumbing here for, what was it? Bolsang?
For what?
Bolsang, are they local or?
They're out of Charleston, I think.
Yeah, what was the deal on that? Is that something that we could, I mean,
But they do a lot of work in Champaign. I'm sure they were.
I just looked, I forgot to ask you about.
That would be for the stool at the municipal.
Oh, plumbing.
Okay.
They're not.
But why did we?
I don't.
They're local. They're Gifford.
They're on, yeah, it was a contact Mike had that he must have.
Well, I just want to, about patronizing local. I just saw it, forgot to ask.
I can ask him how he got hooked up with him. I don't know. He is a vendor he's used in the past, is the way I understand it.
Well, Vogel saying and Duden and Ken Silver are both out of Gifford.
Duden and Silver. That's the one Mike called it. So that's probably why.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you about that today. Other than that, that was the only other thing.
Okay.
Everything else we discussed.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second,
Painter,
Yes.
Wolfensberger.
Yes.
Cummings,
Yes.
Brad,
yes.
motion passed 4-0.
Okay, on to new business. First item is our consideration of the special event permit for the Thompson Memorial 5K. And I asked them to be here, just so that if you guys had any questions, the permit information is in your packet. Did you guys have any, do you guys, one of you want to stand up and kind of give a brief summary on what you guys are thinking about doing? I think it'd be a good way to kind of publicize what you guys are thinking about doing and kind of get it out there. Nora's here, so she can.
Yeah.
She's got the notebook right there. She doesn't.
Out there.
Well, we were kind of waiting to see if it was approved before we
Okay.
really
It's approved.
said anything.
I motion to approve it.
Can I say something first before? Okay, so I talked with the public works director, and so where you want to put the food trucks that and all of that on, not on the football field, we'd want it to be south of that where the fall festival area.
And that's what we just had to do that, so we weren't really sure where, but we.
And we can help you closer to the event, kind of stake out where
Yeah,
a good
that would be
spot, so.
And that's what I had told him when we talked about that. I said, I figured you guys was pretty flexible with where things was going. I knew you were just trying to get your diagram and everything,
So
so.
no, we were just wanting to have a yearly memorial run. It's a fundraiser for his memorial fund, which will fund scholarship at the high school. And we will be giving one out this year to start, and then we want that to continue in the future. But we're kind of envisioning something that's very law enforcement focused and first responder focused. And so we'd like to have, we have that on there, and we've reached out to the fire department who said that they would like to do that, but we'd like to have, similar to like the touch a truck where you can have first responder vehicles. The state police said they would have vehicles and motorcycle and people there to talk to kids or other two. Like to start that before the race. It'd be an evening race, so like at 5. And then we would like to have we're gonna have like a beer tent afterwards, and we do have Smith Burger coming, the Sydney Dairy Barn is coming, for sure, and then we have Logan Allen and Owen Knapp and Colton Taylor, I'm gonna sing in the beer tent, and we wanted to just do some fundraiser activities, so, usually like a raffle and a 50-50, maybe a silent auction type things.
Okay.
For that.
I think it'll be a great event, so so it sounds like we already had a motion in a second to approve.
I do have one question. You're going through the sportsman's club.
I've talked to Danny Eman
Okay.
a couple of times, and he said they were having a meeting, but he didn't see a problem with it.
Well, I mean, I mentioned Joe, I didn't know the conflict of the ball field, but I was gonna mention sportsman club, it's open then for shooting. So I just,
Yeah,
maybe not that,
So you
yeah.
can run and shoot.
Yeah, right.
Run with guns. I like it.
Run with guns. Well, I just thought, maybe you talk to Danny or go to one of the
I
meetings,
did talk to him.
fourth Monday of the month, so I
He
just,
said they were having a meeting, they were to talk about it.
yeah,
I did tell him it's at it'd be in the first 1.5 miles,
yeah.
because they go out, do that, and then they'd be out of there within an hour, so.
Well, I just thought I'd mention because it'd be going past the trap and skeet range and then coming back, but I didn't know if you're aware of that or not.
He told me when we talked, the first time when we talked was in the morning, that the public shooting started at 11.
Mhm.
But we didn't know how late it went. So.
Okay. Well, as long as you're discussing with him that,
And if there is a problem, we said, backup plan, we can just do the whole race at the park.
yeah,
It would just be.
I think it's kind of good, to
Relax.
go around the lake and everything, I think it'd be great, but I just wanted you to be aware of that just in case. It shouldn't be a big problem,
So we will pause.
Okay, Wolfensberger,
Yes.
Cummins.
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Painter,
Yes.
motion passed 4-0.
Thank you guys for coming out. Sorry. It took a little longer than normal.
I learned a lot of new information.
I know.
Yeah.
You have something to show me real quick?
Ah!
I will catch up with you later, so you'll have to show me. I actually heard it was on Facebook, so.
Then I'll say it again for the. I didn't know that was happening.
Okay. I'll catch up with you. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next item is we have a special event for the, last year they did it too. It was the 4 churches in the community do, it's on Good Friday. They do the procession with the cross. I don't see anyone here with that, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory in the packet. It's like. I
make a motion to approve.
I'll second. I'll second.
Thank you.
Move on.
Yeah.
Chase.
I appreciate that. Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Painter,
Yes.
Wolfensberger.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
All right, the next in is the mutual aid through the IPW Man group. We've been a member of that for quite some time. If you can remember back when we had the storm a couple summers ago, it was a huge benefit to have the additional help. It's a great service, not only for us, but also for us to offer us.
I talked to Joel about, Mark, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Did you read this over?
I have.
Are you all warm and fuzzy with it?
I love it.
I'm glad you got it. I mean, I saw a lot of heartburn in it,
Well,
but
no, full disclosure is I probably have 4 or 5 communities that are a partner to that.
I don't see how we could not be in it, but.
Bingo.
I mean,
It doesn't force you to do anything, so you don't have to have a reason why you don't send
Yeah.
somebody.
I mean,
But if you do send somebody, it gives you the legal framework for how that works. So the folks that are doing it don't have to think, they can just go help.
yeah. There was some thing gave me heartburn in it, but Joe and I talked about it. And if you're warm and fuzzy
I
with
am.
it, then I'm warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Okay, Rapp,
Yes.
Painter,
Yes.
Wolfensberger.
Yes.
Cummins.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
All right, the next item is, we have a consideration of purchase of some equipment for the St. Joseph Football Club. The information's in your packet there. I think we have a couple representatives from the soccer club. If you have questions about that. If there's no questions. We have a question.
Who am I addressing the questions to?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
right here. Okay,
Thank you. I couldn't see beyond. Thank you. So, I'm not familiar with the club. Do you do fundraisers or other things? Like how does your club run? What is the involvement?
Okay, so we service students from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. Right now, when students get registered, parents pay a fee. When we initially had requested funds, I think last spring, we did some here. There was a couple recommendations that had come up. We were asked if possibly we could maybe up our fees just a little bit to kind of help cover some of that, which we have done. We increased each grade by $5 to kind of offset some of those costs, and that's how we were able to recoup some of the funds when we got the first set of goals that we did. So initially we asked for reimbursement on that, which we've been able to cover that. And this was the next item on our list that needed to be repaired and replaced. So that's why we are here. Thank you. Yeah, no problem.
And we set money aside for that.
15,000, and you wanted to do it on a case by case basis.
Right, but that's for all schools, right? Or-
Yeah, that's for all schools.
Yep. You wanted to weigh them case by case, which is why we're doing it this way, which is fine. I don't want to make that decision. So the.
How long will these last?
They should last for quite some time. This is the exact same make and model, just the next size up from what we originally purchased. The goals that we currently have, I've been with SGFC since 2013. And nothing's been replaced since I've been there. So soccer goals, they are made to last for some time. So I don't see this, once we make these purchases, I do not see them need to be replaced anytime in the foreseeable future. So I believe that they will last. We went with, again, nice quality, easy to assemble. That's why you see how much they cost there, but again, they will last for quite some time.
Can you elaborate on what's, what the current ones you have, what the issue is with those? Can you just elaborate?
The current, again, those have been there for a very long time. We've tried to, I mean, they're bent, there's some sharp edges there, some of the aluminum's kind of frayed around. Several of the bars, like I said, been bent. So we've taken the tools that we've had several dads that have tried to fix them and tweak them just to get them to work another time. But it's to the point now where that set does need to be replaced just for the safety of all the players. We've had coaches too ask, and we just said, be patient, we're working on it, so.
Do you have some money? So like if we just said, we'll give you X amount of dollars, you can put money with it to get it, or do you need all of it?
I could take that back to my board, to see if that's something that we could come up with a plan to see if we could do something moving forward. We could definitely do that.
Our issue was just $15,000 is what we have for everybody. So
Okay.
if we give it all to you, then nobody else has.
Yeah,
anything.
we understand that.
I'm personally fine with the three.
I was gonna say
$1,000.
I was gonna say $3,000. We just. And then
And I
they
think
come up with the rest.
I could say, granted, there's two of us here, but I mean, I would be very comfortable with that as well. But as far as like the nuts and different things, the second request that was on there, and if we could at least get the goals, I would feel comfortable going to the board and saying, yes, we will cover the rest of the request on there.
So the 3,309.98,
I-
and then you guys do the nets, is what you're,
Yes.
is that something that?
That, I'd rather that.
I'd rather just do three. But you gotta do whatever. I mean. I was just gonna offer.
I just think they'll last, they'll be there if the parks are ours. I mean, that's just my opinion, but
You want to make that a motion?
I'll make a motion to spend the 3,309.98.
Second.
Payne,
Yes.
Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Cummings,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes,
motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. And
Then I'll coordinate the.
Bruce, you're interrupting.
I'll coordinate that with you all.
okay, appreciate it, thank you.
And thank you for your patience during the meeting.
I'll be
tonight too. Next item is, we have a quote for appraisal.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Cummings,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes,
Payne.
Yeah.
Motion passed 4-0.
Right, old business, consideration of bids for mowing and field treatments. You have, we discussed some of that at the last meeting. You have all the information in your packet.
Sorry. My bad.
Did you get the stuff? Did you get the stuff here?
In our packet.
Yes. No, it's
This was,
separate.
yeah, this was on
It's in
your
your box.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
So on both of the.
Did Outdoor Solutions do the soccer fields last year? Or just the baseball fields?
They
This
did,
is what they did.
that same thing they did.
that we're giving them this year.
Did they do this? I didn't know if they did this. I thought they just did baseball, but maybe they did ball.
Give me 1 second. No, they did, sorry, no, they did, these locations. The baseball and softball fields, and then commons area,
So they didn't do soccer last year.
unless
Spring
I'm
Green did
mistaken.
soccer. No, I think Spring Green did everything but I think.
Yeah, why are we going with?
you don't have to, we can change that if you want to, I was mistaken.
I was gonna ask them because they're here if they noticed any difference, but since they didn't do soccer fields last year. But no,
Do you feel like the soccer fields are in bad shape?
weed wise, fertilizer wise.
Weed wise? No. I mean, there's just not weed wise, no.
It's patchy, but, and divots and stuff, but we buy stuff.
But no, we've been able to make it work. We don't wanna be.
No, we're just asking, I just was asking.
We try to
because-
manage as much on our own as we can, so that way we know that you guys have a lot on your plates too, so we really try to. And we have a lot of, parents that are willing to help, so we've been able to do things.
Would they help at the baseball fields? Asking for a friend.
Baseball players, so yeah, any little bit of help we can get, so he's beneficial, so.
Allocation of resources.
That's my opinion.
Then I think.
What's your opinion?
I'd say we use spring green on the soccer fields, then we water them this year instead of just putting fertilizer on the plant.
So the change there would be,
Who's gonna water?
the one.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm near there, I can walk over and turn it on.
So move from professional outdoors,
What's the price?
move it over to
I mean,
spring green.
baseball is double the amount.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, they're all higher. I don't think they just give it all to spring green and. Yeah, you said they didn't notice any difference in baseball, or you wanna stick with him and see if it.
Well, I thought if you gave him 2 years out there or whatever, maybe, but I just thought we didn't get complaints. I don't know if we're gonna turn around and get complaints again, and I'm fine pulling that.
Right, I understand. I'm just saying, it's a.
No, I agree with you.
I mean, it's a lot, and I like Alan, I wish.
He knows what
was
he's
more
doing.
Competitive, and he does know what he's doing, but. What are we,
You want to give all the soccer to, spring green, and then it would be, football and baseball for professional, baseball / softball, sorry.
I don't think
well,
he
the
did.
football, I don't know why,
He didn't do the football last year either, I don't think.
right, I don't think so either. And is there,
No, he
do
did.
they
this-
play that much
Yeah,
football?
yeah.
Maybe.
No, all right, so you want to give football to the, spring green?
That's,
that what you're
that's
saying?
my opinion, and then
Okay.
if we can water some, that'd be. Great.
All right, so I'm gonna read this off, and then if you all like it, you can make a motion, and then we can.
Maybe we just swap it this year. We give, look at that. I mean, the commons are about dead even, so you could give the commons to. Professional outdoor solutions and then give the other stuff to spring.
Yeah, I didn't.
Or do you want to
Mix it up.
do the same exact what you did last year and keep it the same, because that would be. The football field goes to spring green, the baseball / softball fields goes to outdoor solutions. The soccer fields go to spring green.
Yes,
The outdoor solutions gets the commons areas at the sports complex. And then everything else, Hackler
Yeah.
Park, and then Cole Park all goes to spring green.
I agree, yeah.
So
So
I
I
think
think the
it'd
only
be
thing
better-
he gets is baseball.
I think it'd be better to do the same thing you did last year.
Yeah.
That way you get an opportunity to see if it's improved or if it's status quo.
Okay.
Like you said, we didn't get complaints, so maybe you stick it out.
So the only thing professional outdoors is getting this baseball thing.
And
Yeah, that's the same thing they got.
same thing they got last year.
Okay.
I like it.
And then, all right, so that's part one, and then if you want to go ahead and get that one. Is that okay, get that voted on, get that approved, because it's basically 2 motions, and then.
I make a motion to approve what we just said.
Second.
Brad wrote it down.
Yes.
Same as last year.
Painter,
Yes.
Wolfersburg.
Yes,
Cummins,
Yes.
motion passed.
Then the next part of that is the mowing, and this is something that it's really, at this point, it's a decision that you all just need to make. My best estimate is that internally, last year, our internal cost to mow was $42,682.62. That's my best guess. And it's not just a guess, like I just rolled the dice, but that's the projection that I came up and tried to split it up based on the amount of acreage that we're talking. So, the lowest, if you went with the lowest bids with all of the contractors that submitted, that would be $1,645, even per mow. And, if you approve that, what we would do is I would come up with I think we need to come up with a little bit more formal of a contract that sets up some processes for them administratively for how they say, you want me to mow today, and you get that scheduled, and how they submit for payment, and things like that. And then just the terms within the bid document that we put in.
So how many weeks would you say that you mow?
So,
30? Is that what it's?
my estimates are somewhere between 20 and 30 is what we could expect for the season.
So you're actually, if you went with the lowest bid, you're probably saving money or not spending as much.
Unless we have a season where we mow 30 times, then it's more expensive.
Right.
Then will we not have an extra?
You would hire a temp worker. And then last year, it looks like, and this doesn't count because I saw Mike mowing a couple times, actually not just a couple times, he mowed a decent amount. It does not count Mike's numbers, but we have roughly 192.5 hours of mower maintenance time, mowing.
I'm for it. I think we gotta try it one year. I mean, as much as like they were wanting to, but do we still have to have a mower?
Yeah, you gotta have mowers because if we have a
So
tall
we have
grass,
to have a $28,000 mower.
we don't have to buy this $28,000 mower. We're gonna try this out like as a trial.
There's still like along 150 we mow.
You got 150, the rail trail in various places around town.
Yeah, and then, so, even if at some point you contract out along 150 and the rail trail and or anything else that's missing there. Like I said, there's still that nuisance element where you have to go mow tall grass violations, which everyone's gonna just need to keep something on hand.
But I mean, isn't that something where you could probably reach out to one of these guys and have them mow it and they just charge you for it. Yeah.
The nuisance stuff?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is if somebody comes out yelling at you at noon and they don't wanna deal with it as a contractor, we kind of, you know what I mean, that's.
I think a lot of those guys wear hearing protection.
Oh. Yeah. It's up to you all. This is really just if you.
I'm all for it. I think we give it a go. I'll make a motion to go with the low bids.
I know, I thought it was worth giving it a shot. Years ago, when we took a field trip. Me and another trustee took a field trip to Charleston and they had turned over all their mowing parks and everything to contractors years ago and it worked for them, you know, so I thought it was something that we should at least entertain, so.
I think it's worth a try, especially after the debacle on AHW on their.
I mean, I don't think
on their
you're even
mower.
considering the amount of time that goes into if one of these things isn't working and we've got to haul it to Berkey's and we've got to look it over for 3 hours.
Well,
Go
that'd be
get a coffee and think about it and.
down for 4 months, a 6-month season and get a horrendous bill. It's like contracted out and try.
So who's gonna make the motion?
I made it.
I'll second, or unless you want to.
Go ahead. You got a second in there, go for it.
Is the motion to go with the low bid options? Okay, so that would be the lawn care for the sports complex. That would be.
Do you think that number is accurate?
I asked them some supplemental questions, which has. That was the, you know what I mean? So we'll find out. And if, you know, and hopefully it does work out. You know what I mean? It's just that maybe it's a real competitive price, you know, so. But But if you guys are wanting to do that, your motions would be for Fisher Lawn Care to do the sports complex, Ryan Landscaping to do Hackworth Park, Professional Outdoor Solutions do the former Baptist Church, and then Ryan Landscaping to do Cole Park.
And that one might go away if we get rid of that property.
Yeah. So is that's all right then?
Painter?
Yeah.
Wolfensberger?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Motion passed, 4-0.
All right, Joe, do you have any updates?
So. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Mark?
No.
Mike?
No.
Public Works will have a report from that department at our next packet, and Mayor has no updates either. So, trustees. All right, then, if there's
I would interject one thing, and I sent it to Joe. Did he show you the flags that I encountered at the crossings?
I haven't sent that yet, no.
Okay, let him talk to you about it. I'll send you the picture, explain it later. No, nothing. Get her done.
Okay, we do, need to go into executive session.
I'm not sure I can read your scribble, so bear with me, make sure I'm correct. Make a motion to enter into executive session for the limited purpose of discussing employment compensation and performance of one or more village employees.
Or specific village employees.
More specific village employees pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/T1.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Very well read.
Thank
you very much.
It was a good meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry that you got ripped into.
I would think as much as I'm here, I would have had my own reserved seat. I walked in, I was for passing out bags of money.
Well, and I'm sorry that I lost my cool with him too.
You did, Luke.
What do you mean?
I-
I said to her the one time, can you let her finish?
I know,
That's called passion.
I try not to love people into my head, but.
What I wanted to say is,
I guess it's time to retire.
Yeah. I started to ask him, I haven't seen you here in 6 months. Who are you?
He is actually knocked on my.
It's not.
So maybe that's why.
I mean, I've been listening to you guys talk about it too.
Within your mail.
I'm not sure, but I'm not really asked deputies.
Oh, thank you. Talk later. He was surprised. I've been listening to you guys talk about it for 10 months. I kept biting my lip to say, where have you been in the last 6 months?
I know.
You're-
And I hated that when people
Well, that's good.
take these with my-
It's so evenly spread. I mean,
Right.
it's got a two big box.
Excuse me, sir, go ahead.
It's got everybody else.
This is not to see you anyway. Are we ready to?
But it's still pretty
You
nice.
have your.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, stick to that. Spread, I thought.
Yeah.
We'll see how.
Short meeting. Okay, real quick, I need you all go into executive.
I have been
Here, so.
Like,
Coming.
grab me and pull me in, it's
To
like-
go into executive. Roll call. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Painter. Okay, thank you. Cora.
No, I didn't know she needed some help.
And I didn't.
That's why I was going out there and see.
Yeah,
That,
well,
that's when she came up and brought the rest of
occasions. And one night, I'm out.
We're in executive session. Activities are in-
Great.
Shelton,
That's the one that.
Mr. Jackie and Rich Cooks.
Who was Mark?
He's our attorney.
I feel like I wrote down, he said.
And he knows
Mark.
Chris.
That's Chris?
Yeah, that's it.
Camera's still rolling, by the way.
Yeah.
All
Yeah, I
right, so,
Hold on.
we